Welcome to E Squared Emporium for all things AP Psychology. Welcome back to 1.3b, the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system is a system of glands that secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream. The endocrine system includes all sweat, all tears, anything in your digestive or salivary glands. So, similar to the nervous system, hormones work a lot slower than neurotransmitters. So the hormones are the sloth and the neurotransmitters are the cheetah of the body. So hormones can affect our behavior for minutes or hours or weeks. Sometimes it feels like years. Sometimes it feels like all of middle school. So our hormones affect our vitality, our fight and flight, our metabolism, our growth, our sexual development, pregnancy, childbirth, and emotional balance. And here in this picture, we can see that's the cast of Harry Potter in their very first movie when they were just little ones. And that's the end of the last movie with the Harry Potter cast, same cast. And you can see how hormones have completely changed their bodies and how they look. And Hermione has gotten taller now than Harry Potter. So, pheromones are hormones that are secreted that influence behavior. Usually, they are sensed by our smell or our taste. You're not aware of them. They are so subconscious, but your tongue has receptors for them and your nose has receptors for them. Animals also use pheromones. They evoke specific behavioral, developmental, or reproductive responses, part of the falling in love, puppy love stage pheromones. And you can actually buy human pheromones to attract people, which is kind of cheating. There are releaser pheromones and primer pheromones. You don't have to get into that much detail. So let's start with adrenaline, also known as epinephrine. So adrenaline and epinephrine, it functions as a hormone. It can also function as a neurotransmitter in the body. So you may see it listed as either one. Don't be confused by that. It is made by the adrenal glands. It prepares you for stressful or dangerous situations. When you get an adrenaline rush, it's a quick release into your bloodstream. So if you've just survived a roller coaster or you've jumped off of a cliff or gone bungee jumping, it gets your body ready for a fight or flight response. And you do need to know that it's called both adrenaline and epinephrine. Melatonin, we like melatonin because it lets us sleep, right? Melatonin is the hormone found in plants and animals and humans. It is released by the pineal gland in the brain at night. It is associated with controlling our sleep and wake cycle. And yes, we can buy supplements for melatonin. When we get to the sleep section, we'll talk way more about melatonin. Ghrelin. Ghrelin tells us when we're hungry. It's the hunger hormone. Ghrelin stimulates our appetite. Ghrelin promotes eating. We will talk more about ghrelin and leptin in other sections of our course. But the way we remember ghrelin, your stomach is ghrelin when you're hungry. That's how you remember ghrelin. And leptin helps to regulate that appetite. Leptin is supposed to tell us when we're full. And sometimes it's working and sometimes it doesn't work as well as it should. Leptin is produced by the tissue or body fat. It's released into the blood, and it reflects the amount of energy stored in the fat tissue. So again, it's a hormone that helps us balance satiety, like feeling satiated after a meal. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It is a hormone produced in the hypothalamus but released into the bloodstream by the pituitary gland. Its main function is to help facilitate childbirth and that early bonding, and it's called the love hormone. We'll talk more about oxytocin in our developmental chapter, but we also release oxytocin when we pet our animals. Petting a cat or petting a dog also releases oxytocin. So here's the endocrine system. So neurotransmitters are found in the brain, in the central nervous system, but hormones can carry messages everywhere else. They're just slower. And we're going to go through these one at a time. You can use this to fill out your chart. We're going to go through each one as well to fill out your chart. The pineal gland is not listed there. It's not generally on the AP test, but I thought it might be interesting for you to know where it is. It does produce melatonin. It actually means pine cone, and it looks like a very tiny, small pine cone, and it's in your brain. It's in the brain of most vertebrates, in fact. It produces melatonin and a serotonin derived hormone that modulates sleep patterns in circadian and seasonal cycles. The pineal glands, when we're having trouble sleeping, these are the kind of things we look at. So the hypothalamus, we're going to do a couple things on the hypothalamus. It regulates hunger, motivation, emotion, and it controls the pituitary gland. Some call it sort of the master gland. If you have a dysfunction to your hypothalamus, you can't control hunger. You can't control body temperature. You might be cold. We see this with anorexia. We also see this with obesity. More about the hypothalamus. Again, it controls hunger, thirst, emotions like rage, terror, and pleasure. We will look at some studies with pleasure control in the hypothalamus. Again, body temperature, sexual arousal, sleeping, and more of the endocrine system that we will look at. So, what happens with the hypothalamus, if your needs aren't getting met by one, the hypothalamus will tell you to go to the next one. And that's why sometimes when you're bored, you decide just to go to sleep or you decide to go eat. The hypothalamus is kind of constantly seeking the next thing, right? Or right after you've just been really angry, maybe you're really sleepy, you're really hungry right afterwards. So again, that's the dysfunction, right? If the needs aren't met, we go to the next need. If you didn't get enough sleep, you're going to go to food. If you can't get enough food, you might go to sleep. You're just going to keep kind of going to the next one. The pituitary gland is located on the underside of the brain. It's connected to the hypothalamus. There's two parts, the posterior and the anterior. The posterior is controlled by the nervous system and it secretes two hormones that signal the uterus during childbirth. So that's oxytocin and vasopressin. And it also tells the mammary glands to produce milk. The anterior part of the pituitary gland controls growth hormones. Again, this is also called the master gland. It produces the growth hormone that we typically want to see, but it can also have problems and dysfunctions like dwarfism and giantism, and we'll look at some of that in class. The thyroid gland is located just beneath the larynx, and it produces the hormone thyroxine. Now, it converts our metabolism, so it decides how fast your metabolism is working. How fast are you converting food into energy? And as people start to slow down their metabolism, they start to develop problems with their thyroid. So if you have too much thyroxine, we call that hyperthyroid. Hyperthyroidism can lead to enlarged eyes. It can lead to irritability, weight loss. You get very, very thin. You can get sweaty. You get irritable. Your heart feels like it's racing. It could feel like a panic attack. You could get tremors, anxiety, maybe insomnia. You're not sleeping well. You get thin skin, brittle hair, you generally feel weak. If you don't have enough thyroxine, you get hypothyroid, and that's actually what the majority of people are suffering from is hypothyroid. We tend to gain weight, tend to slow down your metabolism. You have no energy. You get very cold. Your hands and feet are cold a lot. It leads to depression. Your skin gets very pale, and your skin and hair can get very, very dry. Now, damage can also occur to the thyroid from yelling, from excessive singing and straining. We've had issues now with several of our musicians, right, our recording artists, who have had to stop recording or stop performing on the road because they're having thyroid gland issues. Now, you should know that most chemicals that we put on our body can impact the thyroid, such as hair dye and deodorants, and anything that's toxic gets absorbed right into the thyroid. The parathyroid, there inside the thyroid are four tiny little pea-shaped organs. It kind of looks like snake skin in there, right? So you can see the parathyroid glands there. And they produce parathormone, which controls and balances calcium and phosphate in the blood and tissues. So the calcium controls the excitability of the nervous system. So how much anxiety or nervousness. Too much, we feel tired and poor muscle condition. Too little, you get hypersensitive, you can get muscle twitches. Let's move on to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are so very important. They're very tiny, but they're so important. They're right above the kidneys, and they secrete hormones that help us deal with stress. So epinephrine and norepinephrine. Remember we were talking about an EpiPen, right? Epinephrine, norepinephrine, that balance, that homeostasis in the body. So the pancreas is located between the stomach and the small intestine. It controls sugar levels by secreting two hormones, insulin and glucagon, and those two have to work together. Too little insulin leads to too much sugar in the system. The kidneys flush the excess sugar with their water. The tissues become really dehydrated, and poisonous waste accumulates in the blood. And that's what we call diabetes. And there's different levels and stages of diabetes, and there's prediabetes, and there's childhood diabetes. But too much insulin leads to too little sugar in the bloodstream, and this is called hypoglycemia. If you're ever really, really tired after lunch, or you've had a really big meal and all you want to do is go lay down, that's what hypoglycemia looks like. So the gonads are the testes in males and the ovaries in females. And what do? They work with the adrenal glands. People don't typically know that the adrenal glands are part of this system. And they stimulate the reproductive organs to become mature, to go through puberty. They also are going to help us develop secondary sex characteristics, which are like body hair. For men, it's the voice changing. For women, it's developing breast tissue. So for women, we have a predominance of estrogen, but women also have testosterone too. People don't tend to focus on that. Men have a predominance of androgen and testosterone. And testosterone, specifically in men, we see as the aggression hormone, and we'll cover that more under some aggression topics. And now you are prepared for class, and we will do the rest together.